Press. So if you want to stay, the prompt is now available. Welcome everybody to Kind Mind Community. My name is Kelly and I'm really, really happy to have you all here from around the world. And the group is continuing to grow and I'll continue to let people in. And today, for today's conversation, I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty chill. I'm feeling the love of the principles today. And and in that just calm, beautiful space inside me, I have a warm feeling about the conversation today. So I'll begin by saying that Julian came in a very auspicious sort of snake in the grass way into my life. And how it worked was, you know how sometimes you're scrolling on your phone and you just one thing leads to the next thing and the next thing leads to the, and before you know it, I'm looking at this amazing creativity and this gentleness and this beautiful way of, I always say to Julian, fading in, fading out, and this soft way of delivering messages. And it wasn't just Julian's messages that he was delivering, but it was the messages of a lot of people in the Three Principles community, more than I had ever seen one person work with. And so I started following him. I started creeping on him. And so I became the snake in the grass, looking around at all his videos. And there came a point where I just realized that he had something I wanted. And what I wanted was to learn, to be a part of his experience and his knowledge. And so I took advantage of an offer he had proposed to me about after we made the connection and met. He said, come and join me in this learning that he had, which was an educational video program to learn a little bit more about how to do videos. And so it began there. And I've been following his videos, his experience and his knowledge, and working on my own as I'm watching all these beautiful videos being delivered by many people in the community of Three Principles, but also outside of that, I'm sure. Julian's probably worked in other arenas as well. But I just want to invite the conversation today from a friend. And I'm going to say that, Julian, you can take over and begin and allow wisdom to run the conversation in whatever way you would like. So I'm happy to have you, and I'm going to go to speaker view now so we can record you and who all of who you are, your whole face.
Thank you. Um, it's really lovely to be here, and I don't know, it's the kind of thing that I normally do, but I was inspired. I don't know who it was that I came on and into your Zoom room and was listening to and watching, but I had a moment where I was kind of like, oh, I think I've got something to share. And then I asked you, and you graciously put me on the list. And then 21st of June rolls by. Well, no, it's not the 21st; it's the 14th.
Yeah.
Rolls by, and it's my turn, and I'm like, ah, okay. Now it didn't quite happen like that because last week, sometime I think we've been discussing. Maybe you said to me, maybe you want to put some of your films on the and on the page, the Kind Mind Academy community page, and there were three films that came to me that I did maybe 2 years ago, and that I wanted to share again. I wanted now normally I'm more about filming people who want to share their message and be seen. Um, Quite often, that's for if they're trying to attract the right people to them, the people that feels right to work with, then having a nice video where people can get a feeling of you and connect with you through the video is a really great way of doing it. And also I've been doing it for charities and organizations who want to reach people that they want to serve, that they want to make a difference with. If they're applying for funding, then quite often they want to demonstrate to the people that would give them the money, the impact, or the positive impact of what they're doing. and I would get involved with those kind of situations as well. So it's not really very normal for me to film me. But actually, the second part of that is that in a lot of people, when they discover the principles, I think, and certainly in my era, which is 2010, with the wonderful Steve Fullerton, who's on this call. Really, lovely to see him again. Not see him, hear him again. And I discovered the three principles through a guy called Jamie Smart, and he was bringing lots of eminent people over from the United States, the kind of Kathy Caseys and Sandy Crotts and Dickon Bettingers, and we were getting 3 days with all of those guys, and really, it was like a deep immersion in at the deep end. And a lot of people come out of that. They were either coaches already and wanting to coach using the three principles, or a lot of people decided that they wanted to coach the three principles. And I get that completely, because for me, it explained something. It helped me look at life in a way that I hadn't seen before, and I find enormously helpful, really helpful. It's like if somebody gave you, your smartphone and didn't give you any kind of an introduction to it, just said, "There's a phone, quick, download this app and do this stuff." Now, babies and young kids nowadays do learn all that stuff like pretty quick, which is amazing. But for us older people, I'm speaking for myself, it wasn't a kind of natural thing, and it takes for me some kind of introduction to for me to go, oh yes, now I get it. And that's what the principles was for me. It was like I'd been stumbling around, not badly, for the first half of my life, and I'd achieved some stuff, but I'd also found things difficult along the way. And I mean, was it sort of like that old saying, life's a contact sport? So, but just having that understanding of like how the game's played a bit, it just makes a difference. It really makes a difference for me, or made a difference and makes a difference. So I didn't want to, I knew I didn't want to be a coach. In fact, I'm an awful coach, because I'm the kind of coach that I see what the problem is and I go, right, so what you need to do is, and of course, that's never the way to do anything in that kind of world. Much as the great intention that I have, like I really want to help people and so on. But I remember there's a Michael Neal thing in one of his early books where he says, coaching is funny because if people are in a great place, then any advice you have to give them, they don't need, because they've already figured it out. And if people are in a horrible place, then any advice you have to give them won't be listened to, because they're not in a good place to listen to it. So yeah, I knew that coaching wasn't going to be my thing. But shortly after coming across the principles, I kind of got involved with filming stuff, and I just realized that I loved everything about filming, and I knew that that would be the way of me sharing this understanding. Now, I think I'm a little bit simpler than that. I think I'm sharing a feeling. One of the things that really encouraged me was seeing Elsie Spittle doing a recording of Elsie Spittle doing a webinar just like this, and it was still a very, very deep feeling that came out from that recording, just like when you are with Elsie live and in person. And so it was kind of like, oh, so it works you can do this through video. That's brilliant. How do I do that? And that's what I've been doing for the last 10, 11 years, is to figure out and do that. Create things that allow people to, I would say, tune into themselves right? So we know that it's not Elsie Spittle because it's like a recording of her, right? She's not even there. It's just us looking at, listening to, something, and through our senses we perceive something, and then that leads us to a place of good feeling and insight and stuff that we all create. We all, of course, we all know where our experience is coming from most of the time, right? So I embarked on that journey, and that's been where I'm going, where I've been going ever since. And so it's lovely, Kelly, that um, you're. I said to Kelly when we first met, what's she sharing, and she was then quite inspired to start doing some video work and sharing what comes to her. And I think that's a really lovely thing that's on offer here is for us to all share our nuggets, our little bits of wisdom, because everybody has them. I don't consider myself to be an enlightened man. And in some ways, if I compared myself to, Natasha Sverdlov or Joe Bailey or Harry Dubitsky or any of those guys, I mean, they're way more enlightened than me. But I know that I've got my own little nuggets, and that's what that's what I'll share. But also, I'm sharing it from a point of view of everybody on this call. I know, like the people that I do know and the people that I don't. But you all have your wonderful nuggets and insights and your own guidance system, and I love that. I love that for me because I know that I have my guidance system, and I love that for you because when I know that you're inspired to do what you're inspired to do, and the way you live your life is different to mine, and that's all cool. That's all really cool, and it's all working out just as it should. So back to those. So before I go on to those 3 films, so I would love this to be a conversation today. It's not necessarily about me being on this call for however long, and you guys sitting listening and then seeing what I have to say. I'd love for this to be a conversation where if we've all got nuggets of wisdom to bring, then I'd love to hear them, because you can teach me, you can help me understand life better, I'm sure, and I'm always open to that. I'm always looking for more. They call it deepening their understanding in the principles, which is a cool way of putting it. But at the same time, I think my trip through the principles has been sometimes seems like one step backwards to take 2 steps forward, or even 2 steps backwards to take 1 step forward. Sometimes I don't know which. And the 3 films that I've put on the page, if you haven't watched them, are a bit like that, because the first film is called The Seat of Uncertainty, and I filmed it. Fortunately enough, had a friend of mine who also uses a similar technique to the one that, or a similar approach to the one that I use for filming. And so I got to be authentic on the camera. And I was in a very uncertain place at the time, and that's why it was called The Seat of Uncertainty, because I think we had a joke over, what's this? What is this about? And he's like, well, you're sitting on the seat of uncertainty. Tell us about uncertainty, and I did. And as I look at that now, from my place of knowing how the game works, it feels to me like I was lost in the illusion. I, I, there was some thinking I had that I believed was totally real, and I was suffering because of that. I was, and interestingly enough, that video got a lot of watches and a lot of shares, and a lot of people liked it. And there are other videos that I've done that where I'm more positive and upbeat and clear, and even the third one in the series, it's called Part of Something. Now that to me is, I'll come back to that, but that's more upbeat. It didn't get as many views, and I wonder why. I wonder why we as human beings love to associate with. Why is it compelling for people to be in a difficult place, for your heart to reach out to them when they show you that difficult place, rather than for our hearts to reach out to people when they're in a beautiful, serene, joyful place? That's an interesting question, and I haven't got an answer to that. So anybody who wants to chip in and have that discussion during this next 40 minutes would be fine. So the second film in that series is called That Perfect Place. And now you could be mistaken in thinking that I've recorded all these three films and I scripted them and I knew what they were. This one was going to follow that one, was going to follow that one, and no, I didn't do that at all. I allowed. One of the things I've learned over these years with this filming is to allow creativity to do its thing, wisdom to do its thing. So I didn't even know that I was going to record what I recorded on the first one, The Seat of Uncertainty, until I recorded it. And then I let it slip. And the only thing I knew was that this was going to be a 3-film series, but didn't know what the other films were. Until one day I was walking, I was going to see some friends, and I was walking. I had some time to kill. I was walking in a river, nearby a river, and I got my phone out, started to film the river. And that's where the second film came, The Path. It's called The Perfect Place, because it was a perfect place. Lovely greenery and beautiful kind of slowly running water trickling by, and just very serene and calming. And compared to that first video, it was a very different experience. And then when I sat down to see what I would say, I was talking about, some people call it the fact of thought, I think. They're talking, but for me, it's about when you take a step away from your thinking. Like, in the 80s, there was a lovely guy that I used to use his customer service training, or he was about helping people manage stress. And he would say, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to stand up from your chair. I want you to point at the chair and say these words: that is a very difficult situation. Like, you're not the situation, but there is something that's difficult. Because the moment that you're it, that's when all the suffering starts, right? That's when all the stress comes from. That's when the inability to deal with the situation, or your ability to deal with that situation, gets less. And what I in that Perfect Place video, that's what I was pointing to, the fact that when we can step one step away from all of that thinking, then you're in a place of peace, calm, more objectivity. When you're in, like the first film, when you're in that illusion and totally sold by it, you're in a place of suffering, and your ability to think through to a good solution is is not there and in the same way. And although you do the best you can, and quite often that involves more thinking to try and sort the thinking that you're already struggling with. So being able to take that step back, and it's just a metaphorical step back, isn't it? I don't really have to stand up out of my chair, but just to know, like, whoa, hold on a minute, I'm caught up in something and I don't need to be. Now, sometimes that doesn't work for me. Sometimes that, even though I know it's my thinking, it's that, that thing that they always say in the 3 principles about when somebody's in a low mood, don't ever tell them it's just their thinking. But actually, go back to my tell you coaching style, that's exactly all it is. And if you've got the awareness to be able to step back from that and go, hold on a minute, that's your thinking. That's not you. And one of the things I loved about Natasha Swerdlow and what she's sharing at the moment is the fact that she's talking about you aren't your labels and you aren't, the experiences flow through you, but they aren't you. She's talking about a you that's beyond all of this thinking. She's talking about the fact of thought in a different way. She's talking about us as divine beings. When I came to the principles, I was so like, what do you mean this is a spiritual thing? Yeah, I wasn't drawn to the psychologists, to my understanding of the principles. I was drawn to the more spiritual people like Chip and Jan and Elsie. Because they live in Dickon, they live in a world of good feeling. And don't we all want to live in a world of good feeling? Yeah. And if I contrast you back to in my previous life, before understanding the principles, I was living in a misunderstanding. I was living in a misunderstanding that hard times meant good, things were happening. Hard times were, one of my skills was being able to tough out the hard times. Like, does everybody here know a song by a guy called Billy Ocean called When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Get Going? Do you know that one? Yeah. Well, that was my theme tune. That was. And I said to my kids, who were young at the time, if there's one thing we can do in this family, it's tough out the hard stuff. We know how to do that. And so now I know how this game works. The moment I hear that little tune starting in my mind, when the going gets tough, it's like, oh, hold on. And it's made a huge difference to my life in the quality of it and the way I feel about it. But I do find that there are times when some of my old stories or my old understandings come in, and I find them very compelling, and I get drawn into them and think they're real for a while. And then I kind of take that step back and go like, oh, well, what are you doing? And in 2013, I wrote a book called Life Beyond Money, which is now, I don't know, it's kind of a bit of it's a bit of historical fact. Stuff did happen. It's a bit of my journey at that time, which is real, which was real, or how I saw it at the time. It's got a whole load of stuff in the middle where you can see me kind of trying to let go of controlling life, and because the one thing is, like, from all my years as a project manager in corporate environment, the one thing is that any plan that you got, it isn't going to turn out that way. And if you're trying to keep it all on track and keep it all going and flowing, etc., you're constantly playing, what do they call it, whack-a-mole, that thing where a little thing pops up and you have to hit it with a hammer and try and keep them all down. And that's a stressful, complicated busy way of doing things. Whereas creating this little 3-film series like I did there was no stress with it. It was an ease to it, and they were lovely. They are lovely films, and they do stand the, I think you'll tell me, but they stand the test of time, and they share something beautiful. Yeah, yeah. And film, the third film is about oh, before we finish something about the book. So the third part of the book is like my insights at the time. This is like back in 2011, 2012, and I had only been in this principles world for a couple of years at that point. But as I look back on those, all of the insights I had then are still relevant now. I just understand them a bit better, I think. I could articulate them maybe better now than I did then. And maybe that's what I'm doing in a way, in Part of Something and Perfect Place and The Seat of Uncertainty. But in that Part of Something video, that again started with there's a lovely piece of river that we live nearby, and they went and got some lovely footage of that. Again, so interestingly enough, that nature and water and it's I find that very grinding. I find that very grounding and calming, and I can go and just sit there, and it helps me take that one step away from my thinking. And so Part of Something is really, when you sit down at that bench by that river and look out at the birds and the water flowing and the sun going down and the trees and the clouds, and you see this magical system called the universe in operation, and you realize again, it's that little nudge to go, you're part of this. You are an intrinsic part of this. And just like the birds and the water and the trees, etc., are doing their thing and it's all perfect, you're doing your thing and it's all perfect. And for me, I think there's a piece in the book where I kind of, at a certain place, I looked up the meaning of the word faith. And if you look in the dictionary, it says faith is about trust in something bigger than us. And if I went back to my previous life, pre-3 principles, I didn't trust life. I thought that the only person that was going to make it happen was me. And if I didn't do something, then it wasn't going to happen. And I don't know, I missed out on all the stuff, of course, that life did for me, or I thought it was me. I thought it was part of my planning and my control, etc., that had made it happen. But I can tell you a story about my daughter, my first child. We really wanted to have kids, and we were trying and it didn't happen. We took medical advice, it didn't happen, and we reached a stage where we just about gave up. And part of that plan along the way had been, we were looking for a house, a family house, because we hadn't had a family house at that point. And so we decided that we'd give up on the having children thing, and we just do the house thing instead. We just move and then, put our focus into that. And guess what happened? First child came along. It was like, just when I'm not expecting it anymore, not trying for it, not doing it. So life was always there going, and now you're ready. Bing. Or it would be saying, I mean, I've had other times in my life where I think I've found life to be difficult. It's like no, no, you're telling me that the road I'm traveling on, I need to turn left now, and I want to carry straight on, please. And but life is a very powerful force, that whole universe thing, and it's gentle pressure relentlessly applied. It can't be denied. It does its thing, and we get to be part of that, whether we like it or not, if you see what I mean. So one of the things that I think is one of my takeaways so far from the principles is it's about letting go. It's about letting go of everything that you want to happen, that you think should happen, that ought to be happening. And along my journey, my I've asked myself this question a lot of times. How's this going to work? Like I don't have. If I start filming, I've got no clue how it's going to be a viable business or a way of life, etc. And I'm sitting there asking myself, how's that going to work? But inexorably, you produce better films and you get people coming along, and then you get kind of connections with people like Kelly Mabel and so on who I didn't know before, and somehow we stumbled across each other. Life put us together, and we're doing something now, and I hope that will be a ripple in the pond that will make lovely waves that will change the world in a positive way. That's always my intention. So part of something. So yeah, so it's trust in something bigger. And if you go back to that first film, The Seat of Uncertainty, at the end, it says trust. It says what you need to do is trust life. And what I've seen even since then is, well, you don't have to trust life because life's doing its thing anyway. It doesn't, in a way, it does care about you, but it doesn't. It's doing its thing, and you're playing your part in it. So you don't even need to trust it because it and life doesn't stop. Everything that is the universe and life doesn't stop. And so we're born along with that. We're being carried, each of us individually. Oh, now hold on a minute. This is my ravings of a madman moment, because you might not agree with me. But that's my sense of it. And when I looked up the word faith and it said trust in something bigger, and I kind of went, oh, you mean it's not just about me? That took the pressure off me so much. I've been putting myself under so much pressure to be a good dad, to be a good corporate person, to be a good, successful businessman or motorbike rider or whatever it was. Everything had to be done well. So being successful was important, and now I'm seeing stuff about how, like Natasha talks about how these labels don't help you. They aren't you. When you get attached to them, then they can just become a source of difficulty, mental angst. And so letting go, I think, is one of the, following a good feeling might be one of the things for the principles, but another one is letting go is about not being attached to. And then my third thing is to not listen to how does this going to work out? How is it? Because life is doing its thing always. And we are part of that. So brilliantly, I mean, I never intended those three films to be about, well, the first one ends up being about thought, the second one ends up being about consciousness, and the third one ends up being about mind, because being part of something is about mind, right? It's about there's an intelligence that powers us all up. The second one, about taking a step away from your thinking, is about your awareness. It's about your level of consciousness that that gives you that clarity, that gives you that space and that distance to view the game from a different place. And the the first one, The Seat of Uncertainty, is about the power, absolutely the power of thought to create your experience. So I didn't ever set out to make 3 films that were about mind, consciousness, and thought, but I think that's the way it turned out. And I'm quite happy. They don't mention mind, consciousness, and thought, and I'm quite happy with that. They don't necessarily. I've done some recent films, some very recent films, where I've played about with kind of a bit more of the tell you coaching. I've got one that I've got yet to launch, which is called You're Amazing, because you are amazing. We're all amazing, and we don't give ourselves the credit for how amazing and unique and wonderful we are. I think I say in one of those films that without there being all of this stuff around us doing its stuff, we wouldn't be there. But in the same way, without us, would there be everything that is there? Would everything else exist? We are a unique but vital part of this system that we're all in. So when I do films like that are more, I don't know, advice and direction, people that are not in the principles world like them more, and people in the principles world kind of go, oh no, this isn't the principles. So I'm still experimenting. I'm still going in different directions and trying stuff out. And I'm still, one of the things I love about living is that sometimes, that whole thing that somebody, you go and you get some new piece of equipment and you don't know how it works, so you ring them up and they say, oh, haven't you read the manual? And you go, no, I haven't read the manual. And so they give you the advice and support anyway, or they don't, and you have to figure it out in the manual. I don't know, which they send you a link to some help page and say, was this useful? And the point of that is that we go between being caught in that fact of thought, being caught in that thinking, and thinking it's really real and everything is, well, could be wonderful, could be totally wonderful, and we're completely deluding ourselves in that direction, as opposed to the other direction where we're thinking life is absolutely horrible and that's it. It's why are we even here? But just being able to, we lose that and then we get that perspective back again. And for me, it's things like, I can remember very early on in getting my understanding of the principles, it was like, oh, so if I could just raise my level of consciousness when it's low, then everything would be okay. So how do I do that? Now, what are the techniques? Tell me what the technique is for raising my level of consciousness and in any given moment. And the answer, I don't know that there is an answer to that. I've heard Bill Pettit talk about gratitude is the fastest way to a good feeling, and yet I've seen people like Louise Hay. She came up with a thing where you had to do your gratitudes. You had to write down a list of things that you're grateful about, and every day you had to be grateful. At the start of the day, being grateful, or 3 times a day, you had to look at your list and say them out loud, and all the rest. And to me, that's trying to do something. That's a technique. That's a strategy. And yet, the power of these principles are that this too shall pass. You might be caught up in some thinking today, but tomorrow it can be different. Unless you're back in my old world where you think that you have to fix it by more thought, by more mental effort. One of the things that Dickens said recently was that when you step to this other place, I'm paraphrasing him now and using some of the words that I've already used, when you step to this perfect place, this place one step away from your thinking, there's so much less mental effort involved, so much emotional. It's emotional. Do you ever have a situation where you get caught up in your thinking and it becomes physically tiring for you? It does for me. I need to go to bed earlier. I need to sleep more. I don't feel as physically as good as I would if I was in my, if everything was clear. And so being in this place, one step beyond, allows that to happen, allows you to not use anywhere near the mental energy that you would use to make life gets easier. Life just gets easier. I had a thing I did a long time back where I've still got one set of workshops from Dick and Bettinger when he first started sharing independently of Pransky Associates. And you can still get that it's on Vimeo on demand. I can send you a link if you want. It's lovely because it's a very personal experience. He laughs and he cries and he tells stories and explains the principles as he knew about them at the time. And I did the video to introduce that and talked about this is your getting started guide to life. This is the simple 3 pages that tell you how to use your phone to make a call. It's the same thing, but about life. And it's a life of naturalness and ease. And again, I think that a lot of people would, if you say to them, I've just been watching something by a guy called Gabor Mate, and he talks about trauma, and this thing's got 250,000 viewers, and he's made trauma a thing. And I look at trauma and I kind of go, well, hold on a minute, is it really that? Is it really a thing? Whenever we make anything a thing, I think it has the potential of causing suffering, definitely. Yeah. But when we just stick with the simplicity of the principles, when we can find that quiet place, when we can see that we are part of something and that something is supporting us, is buoying us up, is giving us, what is that old Rolling Stones song? You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Life's always giving us what we need. That's the perfection of the 3 principles. Now I don't know, sometimes I wonder whether I'm a bit of the 3 principles bigger, whether I'm a bit too, no, I don't need to hear about that because I've got the principles and therefore I understand everything. And I've been recently listening to a guy, and I would really recommend this actually. He's a guy called Anthony de Mello, and he was a Jesuit priest in India, and he talks about, it's called Awake to Life, I think that's what it's called. An audio set, but he wrote some books as well. Died in 1989, unfortunately. But he talks about all of this stuff in just a slightly different way, and it's just really nice because like when you're listening to Chip and when you're listening to Elsie or any of those guys, you feel the truth beyond the words that they're speaking. And Kelly was talking to me before this call actually started with everybody in it, and I was that was the thing I was probably nervous about. Is like, oh my God, how do I speak to people and like tell them my truth? How do you do that? And I hope that you've heard something. I hope that you are hearing something. And I probably said far too much now. So maybe this is a good time to say thank you for listening to me for the last 40 minutes. I didn't intend it to be a solo Roche, but so let me throw it open and let me see what any kind of reactions or responses or anything that you would like to offer me, because maybe I'm missing something here, and I'm always open to seeing something. Stuns. Go on, go on.
Yeah, one of the things that happened in the room with Elsie and Jan and the experience of the principles living through us is that we got very quiet. We got very quiet for periods of time, maybe 5 minutes or 6 minutes, where nobody said anything. And I often think it takes me that much time to catch up to my own thinking, because what you just said was beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the nuggets in it, there were so many. I mean, I because I share the principles as a business, I write the nuggets down, the Julian Freeman nuggets. But yeah, there was many places of stillness in the conversations over the weekend, and so sometimes it takes us time to catch up to our own thinking when we're in a room like this.
Well, that's a brilliant one, Kelly. You've just reminded me that that's one of the other things that I noticed that I've had that's really I found very interesting is when your mind is busy worrying about, should I do this? Should I do that? I ought to do this. I ought to do that. If you look at what you're actually doing, what your feet are moving, where you're moving to, the decisions that have already been made without you even consciously thinking about them, you'll see that wisdom is already guiding you there, even though your mind is going, what should we do? Should we do it this way? Should we do it that way? There must be a clever way of doing this. Oh, this is such a difficult situation, and doing all of that. And again, that fits in with this taking a step back and just seeing what's really going on. Because if you look down and look at your feet and where they're moving to, that's the truth of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what life is having you doing. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant. And so I think you allowing more space for that is a great, to allow your mind to catch up, because that's all it's doing, is it's catching up with what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. I wrote a piece, ironically, on the title was One Step Back. And so when you said that, I thought, oh, remember that, you did that. And it was one of those things where I really realized that I was running at the speed of Kelly. Everything was just go. And when you said, tough out the hard times, yeah, it was like, push through, you've got this, just go, push, effort, work, and I often see people spending a lot of time efforting. And when we spoke of, this came up a couple times, knowing how the game works. So there might be some exploring in that, because when people are new to the principles, Julian, like there may be questions about what Julian's speaking to. Is he speaking to the game of life? Is he speaking to what he sees behind the principles? Is it about the principles at all? Like, do we even need to talk about the principles? So what is the game? What is that game that you speak of? Because the game is, for me, really understanding how I play a part in everything that I do, where I am playing, whether it's the learning of, illusion, or whether it's the fully invest in the efforting or wherever I am in the understanding. So just considering that, how does the game work? I'm wondering what everybody else heard when that question came up, or when Julian said, once I learned how the game works. What comes up for everybody when they hear that? What game do you think, is being spoke of? I notice we've got a lot of people are behind their screens.
Can I answer that? I want to mention two things really there. One is I've heard Chip say a number of times about the principles is about unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we make things really quite sophisticated in our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think what the principles have to offer is it's not that complicated. It really isn't. Anytime that things seem very complicated, you're not on the money at the moment. Step back. And at the same time, so the game to me feels dangerously like it feels dangerously like a thing. And as I said earlier, I think when you make things into a thing, that's when you can get into trouble.
I love
That's when
I love that you said that. That really hit me.
and so the game of life. There's another thing that I've read The Missing Link a number of times because to me I love what Sharon's just said. The way things really work, the game. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
perfect. It's just what it is. It's what life is and what life's presenting to you right here and now. That's a great. I love the simplicity of that. Thank you, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another thing that coming back to the point I was just going to make, which is in The Missing Link, he talks a lot about free will to listen to your thoughts in a positive way and not a negative way, or negative thoughts versus positive thoughts. And I've heard that talk about kind of like, well, that's more positive psychology, isn't it? And I'm not sure either. As soon as you make free will, I had a long discussion with a lady a while back on a Hangout, Google Hangout, when they were the thing, and it was really, we made free will into a thing in that conversation, and it then lost its any kind of meaning and was, I don't need to. I'm trying to figure it out. And whenever you get, what my sense of that is, do you remember being at school and the teacher would ask a question of the class, and the class, and you'd go, no, that's such a simple question. It must be asking a trick question, and I would hesitate to I wanted to put my hand up and answer just like that. But then I'm going, no, it must be a trick question. I'm going to look foolish. I won't do it. And anytime you get into that space of the trick question, I think that's a great thing of, this has become a thing. I'm thinking about it too much. It's too complicated. Simplify.
Yeah.
Take a step back.
Philip has a question. Would you mind speaking to the beautiful feeling that your films have? How did you get that across?
The thing that I do is, in the technical, how a film gets made, people make, like if I'm taking your webinar and I'm going to offer to cut it down from the 1 hour 15 it is to 7 or 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And that's about finding the nugget. That's about finding a place in where where the feeling comes across.
Mhm.
And so that's my job, is to listen, watch, to take in what's been recorded. And at some point it'll pull me and go, that's the piece. This is it. And we could probably do that out of today's session. Maybe the thing that I would pull out would be different to the ones that somebody else has been, Philip, that you've been impacted by, or hopefully out of this session. And so what I do with people when I'm making their film is I sit down and with them, and we make that space, the space where they're free to be themselves. And then they talk, and then at some point, and I can even tell as we're sitting there recording it, the truth arrives, the power arrives, the feeling arrives, and it's like, that's the film. And so there's an element of me. Actually, it's a wonderful gift. You guys have given me a really lovely gift today, because the gift of being listened to properly is so rare. It shouldn't be. And it's the simplest gift, but it's a lovely gift to give people. Listening to people without anything on your mind, without reacting and responding and so on, just taking it all in. Like Sid Banks would have said, listening to music, listening beyond the words. That's what I do, Philip. That's what I do when I'm recording people, and it's such a lovely thing to do, and for
Julian,
all of us.
you've got to be getting, like, I consider these calls like my education, my learning, my deeper grounding. There's got to be something when you come behind that camera and you see them, like something opens up, like you said, and that's it, you've got it. There's got to be something in that space where you're witnessing them in their wisdom, and being able, even the courage. What did in the weekend previously, we talked about the courage to be loved, the courage to show up, the courage to shine. Being, and so there you are with someone finding their courage to show up, and you're filming this, and then you say, there it is. There's got to be something very special about that in my mind.
Two things. One is this is quite interesting, because a lot of times when I'm actually filming somebody, I've got to do the technicalities of the filming as well as listen to them, and that's quite hard to do. And really, you want to not have a camera to worry about, etc. Just listen to them. But what I often do, so my first responsibility is to make sure that it all gets captured properly on the film. But what I then do is I come back to my desk and I start to replay it, and that's when I can really listen, really feel it again myself, and really work on it and sharpen up there are bits that I'll take out and sculpt it down, and it's like a sculpture. You can chip away at the stone, and if you chip too far, then you've spoiled the whole thing. And so it's about crafting the film after that, by listening, by paying attention, by feeling how I tune into what we've recorded on the camera. It is very special, really special, and I love doing it. And at the same time, it's a chance for me to see that I'm part of that bigger creation, because it feels like I'm not the creator. Something is using me as an instrument to create something, and that's beautiful too.
Mhm.
Steve had to go. That's a shame. It was lovely to connect with him. Really nice.
We never know who's going to come to the room. It's always a beautiful experience. You never know.
Well, I would love to catch up with him because it's been too long, and he's a really great guy on in an early part of my journey. So it's beautiful,
We
beautiful.
still have people coming to the room, just so you know.
Sorry,
We still have people coming to the room.
oh, do we?
So, does anybody have anything that's coming up, or any questions, or any insights, or anything they'd like to share? Rick.
Yeah, Julian, it's yeah, we must have a cup of coffee together. The
Cool.
the experience that you have, I mean, it's uh like like I get the whole piece of flow. Like I consider myself kind of like more, maybe a semi-professional amateur, whatever, but I love photography and videographing. Been doing it ever since high school, and and I can hear that same approach that you're talking about when I'm doing weddings, kind of a thing. And you're telling people, like, it's like, I want you to act natural, and they go like, what do you mean act natural? How can I act natural? Like that whole piece of trying to force that naturalness in it. But what I heard from you, and you can either correct me or add to it, is you show up, and when you show up in your kind of natural state, they show up. And I kind of experience that same thing when I'm kind of like, I want to be as, to me, is the more I am myself, they relax and they show up. When I want to direct and control, then things get stiff.
It's very good. Cool. Before I start filming, I will often sit down with people and or spend some time with them, and then yeah, we both get comfortable together, and then when it is the time to turn the camera on. Yeah, absolutely. But even if you don't, and you just start the camera rolling anyway, it just means maybe that time where you're all getting comfortable is recorded too, and you might not use any of that, which is okay. That's okay. No big deal. Yeah. So yeah, it's back to that lovely gift of giving people that presence, that and I suppose it's a gift for me too, because I get a chance to be me, to forget about all the things that I think I should be and ought to be and trying to be, and I just, in that moment, I'm just me. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you related to about playing your part, when you said that, right? It's like, oh, well, what is my part? Am I supposed to be this? Am I supposed to be that? Just play your part, like as it unfolds.
Well,
It's,
the less you think about it, the
yes.
better. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would, in some ways, I would love to be Ridley Scott, and I would love to have 250 people working for me and a 250 million budget to make a film about making life amazing for people. But I'm not Ridley Scott. I'm me. I make the films that I make in the way that I make them, and they have certain people like them, and it's changed lives for people and or help them uh, see the stuff for themselves, etc. And so that's all beautiful, and it's enough. It's enough. I'm that part. I mean, that I think in my book I talk about tuning forks, and I say that we're all an individual tuning fork playing a note, but put them all together and you get this beautiful symphony of music that is our universe. But your note is important, and then you just don't need to play it any other way. You don't need to try and make it sound different or louder or softer or whatever. You just play it. That's it. Simple as that. So if it's all right with you, Kelly, I've got a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
There's that workshop. There's that video series called Playful on Camera. If you want, people want an online course to experience how to film themselves. I'm hoping that will help people, because I want there to be more lovely 3P messages out there in the world, and I want to help people craft them whichever way makes sense.
Yeah.
The second thing I'm doing is, with webinars like this, I can craft those a bit to make them more, give them a higher production value, and maybe edit out some of the bits that you don't need in them and so on, and make them better resources for the future. I've also got, as I said, I've got an old Dickon Bettinger workshop that you can have to listen to. It's a whole weekend workshop. And they're all cheap, these things. And the last thing I've got that I want to mention is, I've got a thing called Stories of Sid. So I wanted to get some stories of Sid the man, like often he gets talked about as a bit of a deity or a guru and I don't think he wants to. I never met the man. And that was the whole premise for this, was I never met the man, and I'd like to understand him a little bit better. So these are all the stories from people. There are about 9 of them now, and as I collect them and record them, I do more. But if you want to listen to some alternative stories, some other stories about Sid Banks and who the man was and what happened, then Stories of Sid on Vimeo is on demand is a nice one. Again, that's really, it's not an expensive thing.
Mm-hmm. Julian, I think I want to share on that just for a minute, because I did have the experience of purchasing the product for better learning around video through Julian. And I want to share that people who are in the room had that experience through me. There's a few people here that did videoing with us. So we came into my living room and we set up a tripod and we put up our camera and we did the program. We did the experience. And I know some of the people in the room right now will say that it was transformational. We were watching each other in our wisdom. And whoever was behind the camera would press go, and then we would share our wisdom around something, and we made little clips. And it's the first time I've ever done anything like this, and it was so beautiful because I was doing it with people that are my friends that want to be in the world, be seen, be heard, they have messages, beautiful messages. And so I would highly recommend that experience. And I thought, for the benefit of those in the room here, what we could do, Julian, is once we've recorded this and I go to put it up for you on Kind Mind in Facebook, could you then underneath that post all the links?
Perfect.
Yeah, so that everybody here can have the advantage. Because sometimes we write it in the chat and people miss it or whatnot, but then it'll be on the page and continued in the feed so people can go back and forth over and over. Because I know there's many people that didn't make it to the room who want to be here, and they'd love the access to that as well, rather than just in the chat. Yeah.
Pleasure.
So we have a little bit of time left if anybody would like to share with Julian or to have a chat, or maybe we just close. Whatever way the room feels.
There's a very sacred thing called gin and tonic.
You're gonna go have one. I love it. It's happy hour in the UK, folks.
Well, it will be. It will be soon. We're going to the seaside again, and then we're going to have a because it's a lovely day today, and we're going to have a gin and tonic in the sunshine.
That's beautiful. The experience is that we are not having such great weather today, but it's still a lovely day. It's not raining, but it's been a little bit different, the weather in Vancouver. But so let's just all say our goodbyes. We can open up the mics. But I certainly wouldn't want to hold you back from gin and tonic. It's one of my favorites. And it's been an amazing morning having everybody here. Celia, I noticed you came in a little bit later. Welcome. And Veronica and Eva. It's been lovely to have all of you. And if you'd like to turn on your mics and say goodbye to Julian and everybody in the room, please do so.
Goodbye, Julian. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Bye, Julian.
Thank you.
Julian. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Much.
Kelly.
Julian.
Bye, Julian. Take care.
Lovely.